What's going on, everybody? Welcome to BWill's Take, another edition of it. Just wanted to sort of give you all a breakdown and a ranking of who I think should be the next Titans head coach. We've had a lot of names get linked, a lot of interviews get requested, and we've got a couple big names that we've turned down, that the Titans have turned down. Harbaugh, Belichick, that they're not wanting even to be in the running for the head coaching role. So I'm going to give you all a breakdown, sort of the traits that I want to see in the next head coach. And then by the end of it, I'll give you all an actual ranking of who I want to see with the next head coach. Also, make sure y'all like the video. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support us. I know I got a video at the end, but make sure y'all do it now, man. It helps us a whole lot, and it allows us to keep doing videos like this and be able to keep creating content for you. You know, you can follow me on Twitter at BWill You can follow us, the channel, on all socials at tftvsports. That's the best way to support us. And if you want in-depth, daily breakdowns of what's going on with the Titans, my opinion on the Titans, which a lot of times ends up to be fact, I'm not lying. BWill at Twitter. Make sure you give us a follow there. Let's get into it. Got two names that aren't in consideration that the Titans have already said reportedly that they're not even going to entertain, and that's Bill Belichick and Harbaugh from Michigan. And I can't say I'm too mad about that. You know, I want us to get some fresh blood in here, a sort of younger coach. I mean, younger than 45, not that age has anything to do with, you know, progressiveness or anything, but it'll be just a good breath of fresh air for this organization, this franchise to grow with a young head coach going into a new stadium. You know, we're going to have a really young team going forward. So I think that'll be really important for this team just to have sort of everybody on the same page. And that's been the wave lately in the NFL, is have a young coach, energetic coach on the sideline. It's been working a lot lately across the NFL. So I'm going to go through these names that we have. We've got Antonio Pierce, Brian Callahan of Cincinnati, Aaron Glenn of Detroit, Dan Quinn, Mike Kafka, Mike McDonald, Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, and Brian Johnson. Those are the 9 names we have so far that the Titans have requested to interview. And 4 of those guys are defensive. 5 of the guys are offensive. And real quick on that, I don't know if people remember, but when Vrabel was hired in the interview process, we interviewed LaFleur, the one that was our offensive coordinator. He's gone on to be a head coach at the Green Bay Packers, doing a really good job. Youngest team in the NFL. I ain't going to say NFL history, but the last, I want to say 50 years, youngest team to make the playoffs. He's doing a really good job up there. But he was interviewed as a head coaching candidate for that role when Mike Vrabel got it. We proceeded to hire him as an offensive coordinator when Mike Vrabel was hired. So keep that in mind, guys, with some of these defensive candidates that we have. These guys can very well come in and be a defensive coordinator. And I'd love to see some of these guys, Antonio Pierce, Aaron Glenn, I'd love to see them as defensive coordinators on this team once we get this offensive head coach, which is one of the traits that I'm expecting and wanting out of the next coach, and that's what I'll be getting into now. So 2 big traits for the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. One of them is an offensive background. Have to have an offensive background. It's much easier to retain an offensive coordinator versus a defensive coordinator, as we've saw in the past with Mike Vrabel and the offensive coordinators he's had that have done really well. They're gone after that year. You know, that's really tough on a young quarterback, really tough on a young team, and it's really tough on a team in totality because your identity as an offense, it doesn't necessarily change, but a lot changes besides that. We've got to get a guy with an offensive background. It's much easier to retain an offensive coordinator than it is a defensive coordinator. It's much easier to replace a defensive coordinator than it is to replace an offensive coordinator. As we've seen over the last 2 years, we've had 4 offensive coordinators with the Titans, Mike LaFleur, or Matt LaFleur, one of the 2. He's got a brother. Art Smith, Tim Kelly, and Todd Downing. Depending on who you ask, 2 of those are hits, 2 of those are misses. I don't want this franchise to be at the mercy and the balls, excuse my language, of a hit or miss when it's calls to hiring a play caller. That's a really important part of an organization, really important part of a team that has to have some continuance, has to have some continuity. You've got to have a stable figure there, and you got to have a stable figure at quarterback to really get the most and be the most efficient way of running a franchise, getting the most out of a team, in my opinion. Not only does the continuity extend to the team, but it also extends to the scouting department, the analytics department. It allows the scouts to know, like, hey, we've got a running back and we need this trait out of this running back to succeed in this system. Same thing for another position, tight end. It allows scouts to really harp in on a certain profile of player and really get the best out of that player. And that best is not always in the first round. It's not always the highest rated player in a position in a draft or free agency. Sometimes it's just a niche that you need a role carved out. Like And I use the excuse with the Rams to Puka Nacua. They had a niche role that they needed carved out, and he fit that role perfectly. He wasn't the most highly touted receiver coming out the draft. They got him in the 6th round, but he fits that role perfectly. He has the exact profile that they need in that role. Same thing with Kyron Williams with running back and George Kittle with San Francisco. These are specific roles in this system that the scouts are dedicating their resources to. Analytics team dedicating their resources to. When you don't have that many holes and you have, you need a tight end right here, you don't necessarily have to go and draft the best tight end in that draft available. That's the good thing about having continuity in a system that works, that's proven in the NFL, and that's working going forward from what it seems, is that it allows you to have continuity from the top down, from the team to the scouting department, everyone. Everyone's on the same page, and everyone's rowing the boat in the same direction, and that's really important for an organization, and that's how you really create sustaining success. That's the goal of the Titans, sustaining success and sustaining a challenge for Super Bowls year in, year out, being one of those franchises you can expect to be in contention every single year. Seriously, we need to have that year in, year out, and it needs to be league recognized. It needs to be nationally recognized. That helps in all facets. It helps brings fans to the stadium. It helps brings free agents that are like, man, I sort of want to play in that offense in Tennessee. That's where it all stems from, having continuity at that play caller spot, having continuity at the quarterback spot, continuity as an offense together, and putting points on the board. That's what the goal is at the end of the day. That's one big trait I have with the Titans coach that needs to come. The next big trait is play calling experience at the NFL level. This will take into my top 2 candidates. But we also have candidates on this list that do not call plays currently in their role. You got Brian Callahan from Cincinnati. You've got Kafka from the New York Giants. You've got Johnson from Philadelphia. These guys do not call plays in their current capacity, and that's not something I want. I want a coach that is used to that responsibility that comes with calling plays. I saw somebody that said Brian Callahan was their number 1 candidate for the role compared to guys like Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick. I'm not understanding that. Brian Callahan, not taking anything away from him, he's the guy that installs red zone packages and other stuff for the Cincinnati Bengals. Stacy is the one that calls the plays. The responsibility falls on Stacy. Stacy's head's going to be the one on the block by the fans, on Monday if they have a terrible game. It's not Brian Callahan that most fans are going to be going after for the red zone packages, them not executing in the red zone. It's a different level of responsibility that comes with calling the plays, making the adjustments in game. I want a coach that already has that under his belt. He doesn't need to be gaining that type of experience on the job. He needs to already have that experience before he comes into the role. And guys like Slowick, guys like Johnson, these are the guys that I want. That has to be the baseline for the next coach coming in, is they've already had to assume that responsibility at this level in the NFL and be used to it. Great teams have had great play callers, whether that's defensive, offensive. It's a prerequisite, in my opinion, of a great team, a great franchise, to have a great play caller. And I'm not saying that any of these guys are truly great yet. A lot of these guys are young, but it takes that time. It takes them getting into that role to become a great play caller. It's very important to solidify that piece of the franchise to a team to where there's not much movement in that role. It's stable. That allows year-to-year improvement. It allows a better and easier acclimating process for rookies and free agents coming in when, your terminology isn't changing that much from year to year. Concepts aren't changing that much year to year. Things are pretty stable. Makes it easier on everybody else. With those 2 pillars in mind, I sort of got a bonus pillar that I want is rich job experience that they have in a proven tree. So, that's where I get my number 1 candidate that I'll be going to, Bobby Slowick. He has had rich experience in the Shanahan tree, going back to, Mike Shanahan, to Kyle Shanahan, spent time on a hell of a staff in Washington with Mike McDaniels, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, LaFleur. Great staff around great minds. That extends to him hiring other coaches and position coaches. When you have a tree like that that's been in this league a long time, that's proven, that's continuing to work, continue to garner success, you have coaches that have coached in that tree that aren't necessarily coordinators, but position coaches that are used to coaching that style of football. Football don't change much from style to style when it comes to technique and such, but there's little intricacies that they have, that coaches have, that they can coach to, that'll give you an edge on other teams. If they have been in those trees, coaching around those different type of coaches, they have built relationships with those coaches. That'll be much easier to bring them here to Tennessee and really install this system as best as we can and as quick as we can, because that's the goal. It also lends us to NFL's a copycat league at the end of the day, and there's tweaks that come into things when you have a certain defense that's really been a beater, like with what Baltimore's been doing this year. They haven't been doing anything crazy different, but there's certain things that they're doing that are beating, certain systems. It's a copycat league. So if you have a system that's being ran a similar way in another franchise, another team, you're able to see a tweak like, hey, Shanahan motioned this guy out, ran behind the other way. Something that's the most simple level, of course. But you can apply those tweaks to your own team in your own way. It's a little bit easier in that respect when it comes to making adjustments league-wide. And, of course, you want a head coach with a mind of your own, but at the end of the day, not many of these guys are not copycatting off each other. That's what the NFL is. But that comes with a dedicated tree like the Shanahan tree that can really be leveraged to be good for the Titans and the organization going forward. With all that being said, I've got 2 names and 2 names only for you. There's only 2 guys on this list, in my opinion, that I feel confident about, and you obviously already know the names, that I feel confident about taking this team to the next level, because that's what the goal is. At the end of the day, the Titans need to be competing for Super Bowls. I have 2 candidates on this list that we've seen so far that I think that can elevate us to that level in due time, and one of them is Bobby Sloak. Of course, he fits the traits to a T. Offensive background. He also has a defensive background, of course, too. He's coached defense before, but he's really earned his stripes as an offensive coach. He has experience in analytics. I spoke to it before. He's worked at PFF as an analyst. He embraces analytics, embraces this modern way of going that football's headed. He has experience with Rand Carthen. They've got experience in a similar system in San Francisco. They're on the same plane with a lot of things. He's my number 1 candidate. Next candidate, and it's not far behind. He's not far behind Slowick, is Johnson from Detroit. Very proven play caller, which is very important. He's used to calling plays in this league. This is his 2nd year doing it, and he's done it really well this year. One of the best-rated offenses per EPA per play with Jared Goff at quarterback, of all people. No disrespect to Jared Goff, but it's Jared Goff. And that's the other guy that I really wanted to see as the head coach. He has the experience as the responsibility of an offense. He takes on that brunt of responsibility in Detroit. They're not yelling at Dan Quinn about calling plays. They're yelling at Ben Johnson. That's who they're yelling at. So he's used to that responsibility. I like what he does in Detroit, and I like what he's done with, an inferior quarterback play. I think he'll do really well in Tennessee if he gets the job, as I think Slowick will also. So, those are the 2 names of the guys that I want to see. Y'all let me know in the comments who y'all like to see as next Titans head coach and why. Make sure y'all like the video. Make sure y'all subscribe. Make sure you follow all our socials at tftvsports. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at BWill and I'll see y'all the next time. Thank you. BWill, make sure y'all like the video. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to give you a button right here or right here, one of the 2. Make sure y'all subscribe.